Chat is a large language model developed by OpenAI that can generate human-like text based on its training on a vast amount of data. It can be used for various natural language processing tasks, such as language translation, question answering, text completion, and conversational agents. Chat has been applied in various industries, including customer service, education, entertainment, and healthcare.
Good afternoon. We're just getting started here. I think it's a great conversation to have. You know, we think about artificial intelligence. We're right here at the North Campus in the Artificial Intelligence Lab, and we see our students and things happening. But we also hear a lot about artificial intelligence out in the world, right? And most recently, ChatGPT and its role with education. And so we have Professor Lee, who's using artificial intelligence every day in his class. He's going to provide some insights. And Noel is our extraordinary AI corporate leader that helps us get intel. I also want to thank Antonio Delgado, MDC Tech, for putting this together, and Manny Perez, NTech, and the entire group there and everyone here at the North Campus. But we thought it was timely to have a conversation about AI and the role that it has in education. We know the role that AI has in our own life. We use it personally. Our phone tells us when to stand up, when to sit down. There's all kinds of ways that we use AI in our life that makes us more productive, sleep better, manage calories, all those things. So we're using it. It's not taboo. In our professional life, we use it. There's all kinds of AI that lets us do voice over text, that lets us create beautiful PowerPoints, that optimizes our calendar. So those are all things that we would absolutely support in our professional life. And then we get to education. And where does AI play a role? And I was just recently with a group of students, and they were asking me about ChatGPT and what I thought about ChatGPT and what would happen in academia. And, you know, would we ban it? And I said, you know, I know you all don't know Britannica Encyclopedia. And so they kind of looked at me a little weird. And I said, Britannica Encyclopedia was Google when I was growing up. And my mom saved all her money so we could have Britannica Encyclopedia, those brown books with a gold trim that were so important. They were like in the living room in glass. Yeah. And you went and you opened it and you got the one that you need, and then you put it back, and they knocked on the door and they gave you your most updated edition. It was like a software upgrade, but it came, right? And you added those. And the students were looking at me like I was an alien. And I said, please, someone Google one of those pictures. And they did. And then they had a chuckle. And I said, I can't even imagine what my mom would have said if someone would have knocked on the door and said, she can't use that to do her homework. Right? Because the next level of that was then going to the library and doing the additional research. And then what happened is, you know, you had to add a couple of sources, and it wasn't just the Britannica Encyclopedia, right? And then, you know, that advanced to Google. Imagine us saying, nope, you can't use Google to be able to do a search of the World Wide Web. Once the World Wide Web and the intranet, you know, came of age, came Google. And so I think now you get AI, which puts these tools in a more intelligent mode. It takes what it would require us to go through and find. It brings it to our fingertips. So in academia, how do we adapt and adjust? How do we make sure that that's a tool that students have? So one of the things we know that AI can't necessarily do are the human skills, the important human skills that our corporate leaders are asking and industry partners are asking for our students to have. Critical thinking, communication skills, right? And so I'll kind of close off with what I said to the students. I said, look, I'm going to challenge you all to not be the cut-paste generation, to be the generation that has this wealth of information, and you can change the world. You can cure cancer finally. You can do the things that are extraordinary that we haven't been able to do because you have all of this information at your fingertips. And I challenge them, don't be that. And I said, and if I were in the classroom, I would be making you apply knowledge, because that's so important, and think critically. So I kind of want to go first to Professor Lee and talk a little bit about what you're seeing in the classroom, how you're using it, and how you're even fine-tuning your assessments with AI being out there and another tool to gather information and gather research.
Sure. Thank you, Madam President. I want to start just by saying that I still remember the very first time I looked at ChatGPT. I was watching the movie Contact with Matthew McConaughey and Jodie Foster. Yes. And I'm looking at that. The premise of the movie is aliens come down, they make contact with humanity. Humanity doesn't know whether to be terrified or whether to be exhilarated and excited. And watching the movie, I get on ChatGPT, and I realize that for many people, myself included, that this is going to be the first time that humanity has been in contact with artificial, let's say, general intelligence. And you can look around now and you can see people don't know whether to be terrified or exhilarated, right? It's still very early on in that process. And so the very first thing that I did was I went and I gave ChatGPT my final exam, and I was mortified to see that it got most of it correct. Most of it correct. And then
it passed the Florida bar.
It sure did.
It passed the Florida bar.
I actually felt bad until I saw that. Beyond that, I start putting in other final exams, assessments, and I realized that this is going to be disruptive. This is going to change things. We've reached an inflection point. So instantly, the first thing that I did is I went back and I said, hey, we have to segment this into 3 different buckets. Bucket 1 is, how can I apply this as an educator? Number 1, how can I use this to assist with developing lessons where I can personalize and customize the lessons? How can we go back and create assessments? For instance, students take the assessments, they'll have some gaps, and then have it automatically create follow-up lessons to kind of bridge those gaps. So that's what we started to build at Kindle campus over there in our data analytics program. We went back to the overall assessments because we realized that, with this tool basically being in everyone's pocket, it changes the game when it comes to assessments. Up until now, we put a Google search out there, and Google is going to give you a list of websites. But it's not really what we want. What we really want is we want the answers. And so you can skip the Google part and just go straight to the essence. And I realized that that's what this was providing for us. And so we had to go back and recalibrate our assessments. We had to go back and start to look at developing personalized learning plans, customized learning plans, taking our existing lessons and asking ChatGPT to do things like, hey, simplify this language. So as I'm giving the lesson from my perspective. As I'm giving the lesson in real time, the ask is, hey, go in and ask, explain this concept. Explain this concept until you understand it. What we noticed almost instantly as we integrated that into the classroom this semester, this was December when I first discovered it, instantly we noticed a lot more participation in the class. Because what would happen was that we had more people that can capture the essence of what we were talking about during the lesson. And that led to more discussions, more conversations, more people that could participate. And I'll never forget, I had one student that told me, Dr. Lee, you're not there when I need you. And I thought, that hurt my feelings. What do you mean I'm not there when you need me? He said, well, we're in class, everything's great. But when I go home and it's 2 a.m. and I'm working on the activity, that's when I need you the most. And so we create our virtual teaching assistant powered by ChatGPT APIs. And now he can go back and he can gain access to that knowledge. That's in the classroom. Those are some of the things that we've been doing. I mean, there's a lot more, but that's the essence of what we've been doing.
I love that because our students have been the same students. We know that they have to balance work and life. And one of the things that I've talked about often is just how do you personalize learning and learning support. And our tutors are great in our learning resources, but they're there for a period of time. And we know that students are typically doing their homework at 10, 11, midnight when they've come home from work, and none of our tutoring centers are open at that time. Right? And how then do you provide that support? And we've looked at different platforms, but here's a perfect example of another platform that may be able to help them understand something or get clear on a way a term is used to be able then to apply it in the assignment that is being asked of them. Noelle, you are always so insightful to us, right? Our programs are special because of the industry partnerships that we have. From the industry landscape, what are you seeing there? What are your thoughts about the power of AI and how it could be used for good in education?
Yeah, I think, so hello, I'm super grateful. Thank you for having me. This is so awesome. I love when I can hang out with you all. I think it's incredible. We actually went on a very similar ride in December. I actually started, and I'm one who likes to be at the right place at the right time. So my journey started at Alexa, for those of you who don't know me, and I was at the beginning of that team. Went to Microsoft when they launched their cognitive services at the beginning. And so now I'm at this beginning and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've seen this before. This is not new. It's the same stuff. Everyone's like, this is the first time and I'm like, well, technically we did this before. But this is the first time that it's been massively available, right? It's been a bit more of a technical solution, like even Alexa, like kind of the technical people bought Alexas first and put it in their kitchen. It leaned more technical. This was like, if you can talk, if you can write, you can use this AI, and I think that's what caused it to evolve. As a result, though, I now run global AI solutions at Accenture. A brand new organization, did not exist until I showed up. But specifically, we created a center of excellence on generative AI. And the first two use cases that came up were problems that are not new, and actually not new since Alexa. How do we get people to say what they want and what they need? And how do we get technology to immediately respond with the right answer? Like, we've been trying to do this for a long time. As a matter of fact, if you remember chatbots, right, we try not to even say that word anymore because people automatically think broken, doesn't work, doesn't answer the question. But now
I say representative.
Yeah.
Representative.
Yes, exactly. I say the same thing. And so now I'm going back to those Fortune 10, Fortune 500 companies and saying, I know we just did this last year, but it's different now. Now there's a model, GPT, for those of you who don't know what that stands for generative, which means create new stuff from old stuff. Pre-trained, which means you don't need to do all the training we've had to do over the last 10 years to make these models useful. And transformer, which is an evolution of natural language, which means magic, right? Like it gives us the ability to say something to a model that's trained on how humans communicate. Trillions of ways that humans communicate. That's why when we put in things, we're shocked about what it spits out. We're like, but I wouldn't even, I had someone similarly with their final exam put in a reference architecture question. Please build me a reference architecture and spit out very specific technical details. And it spit out a reference architecture that wasn't bad. As a matter of fact, I think the guy was like, I think it might be better. And that's where, so industry is realizing this is an option, but here is the nuance. General use of this technology in a ChatGPT model is actually framed on a public data set. Other models like this, BlenderBot, for example, anyone know the disaster that was BlenderBot? So Facebook released this bot on a transformer model, just like ChatGPT, unmonitored, unmoderated, and unfiltered. And within 3 days, it became racist, sexist, and hurt people on purpose. I don't want to pontificate about what that means about humanity, but it does mean that you can't just use this stuff in production. Even our students will get burned as cheaters will will get burned if they don't use it consciously and intentionally. And so that's where, from an education perspective, we don't necessarily, okay, go use it if you want to, but I actually need people who understand how to use this technology. And when you said, curing cancer, the reason that this technology will help people cure cancer is because the people who understand the problem the most can now use the technology to get the answer. Before, it was a big gap between the person who had the problem and the person who knew the tech side, the solution. I used to have a wonderful job of sitting in the middle and trying to help them. Now I just give them a prompt and I say, write your question, and now my model, if it does it right, will give you the right answer. So domain expertise with a new world of what's called prompt engineering. It's all like, before we had contact center specialists or sales support. Now there'll be prompt engineers. There'll be people who understand the customer, understand the product, and are gonna teach a model what right looks like. And that's the future. And it actually looks like cannibalism of existing industries, right? At first, if you don't know, you're like, wait, Accenture, we sit in a lot of contact centers. We have humans that do this work right now. And so Accenture is asking me, whoa, Noelle, what are you doing here? We have a whole business around this. And just like with conversational AI, someone has to, and ask Detroit, someone has to train the robot. Someone has to monitor the robot. This is not a fire and forget, put into production, and then be like, great, it works. This is an everyday monitoring, everyday moderation, everyday verification that what the model's doing is right. And if you watch closely enough, ChatGPT becomes wrong over time when not monitoring it. I had someone, one of my friends, last thing I'll say about this, CEO of a company, I went out and said, ChatGPT, what do you know about this guy? Attributed all sorts of nonsense to this person. The danger in that attribution, though, is that it looked right. It felt right. I was like, I could believe that you went to Stanford, but you didn't. I could believe that you wrote this article and this academic paper, but you didn't. But here's the funny thing. The reason it said that was because other people like him, a pattern was identified, and it said, well, people like you have done things like this, so I'm going to attribute it. And that's true for the model. It's true that that pattern exists, so it's not wrong. It's just untrained. And so I always say AI is never wrong. It's just untrained. It's like a little kid. And that's where education comes in. We need to train people who will be the moderators, the builders, the prompt engineers that will train these models, because that's going to be a never-ending process and massively expand in the industry.
So I have two questions. I'm going to come to you for non-tech faculty, because Noelle just talked a lot about tech stuff. So we're going to come to you. But before I come back to you, Professor Lee, I want to ask Noelle, I think, a point of clarification. You said AI isn't wrong, it's just not trained. And if you had to describe ChatGPT in the form that it is today, at some level, would you say it's an aggregator of all of the data that's on the internet and synthesizes and then produces the answer to the question you've asked it?
Yes, and very specifically, two things happened when you started using that if you've used it before. At the very bottom, it tells you this is a research model for social experiment purposes, which means it's intentionally going to do things that are not cool, which is why it's good. That's why we like it. It's fun. It's not meant to be used in production. The other thing is you signed a user agreement that says, and this is the kicker, that every question you ask it, the queries will be mined. We're going to look at what you're asking in order to train the model on creating better questions. But if you are asking questions proprietary to your client, your customer, the person you work for, you are now training the model to better answer that for your competition. And that's a little dangerous. So how many of us read the EULAs, the user agreements on all the apps on our iPhone? So just as many of us read the EULA in detail of what we signed up for with ChatGPT. But it's very clear at the bottom, every single day, it tells you when you use that tool, this is a research model. We will use every data, it's research. The whole point is data collection, and you are the product.
So
You
should
are
I
the
keep
data.
asking it?
Yeah, yeah.
Is Miami-Dade College a
The
good
best.
college?
Yeah, yeah.
Because
The best
I
college.
asked it, is Miami-Dade College a good college? And it said all of the highlights, and it said it was a
Awesome.
good college.
Yes,
So
that's how we find.
So do I keep asking it that question, or do I need to refine that question so when prospective students go in there
That's right. That's
and
right.
ask whether Miami-Dade is a good college, we get that. But I
That's
wanted
right.
everybody to understand that behind what it is, because when people ask what is it, it is a machine that is quickly taking what it would take humans hours, days, months, or years to aggregate and process and spit it out in a succinct manner versus going to 17 links on Google, verifying the study, summarizing the study. It does all of that. So, Professor Lee, I want to come to you. So, we've talked a lot of techie stuff. And so, the techie geeks in the room are really excited. They're like super happy. To the faculty that are listening and that are in the room that may not be teaching data analytics or cloud computing and those areas in MDC Tech and InTech, but are teaching English or history, what do you say to them about AI? And again, we're using ChatGPT because that's what's out there popular and sexy right now, but it's my understanding Google will launch something already, Bing already launched. So every search engine that you use is using the technology that ChatGPT has to make the search engine more robust and better. So eventually, I don't even know if ChatGPT exists or not. Microsoft buys it, calls it something else, but it's the technology behind it that now everyone is using to power up their search engine capacities. But really, to the non-tech faculty, what do you say and how do you see that?
Sure, thank you. There is a student that came to me and he said, "Hey, Dr. Lee, I'm having trouble," this is non-tech, "creating a class on recursive feature elimination, super technical. I have ChatGPT, and I still can't figure it out." So to your point, it made me realize that even with ChatGPT, if you're not trained in prompt engineering and how to interface with this, then it's going to be garbage in, garbage out. And that's something that doesn't just apply to the tech fields, that applies to everyone. The word that I like to use with this technology is disruptive. This technology is potentially disruptive, which means that it's going to touch every industry in some fashion, right? Every discipline it's going to touch every discipline. And so one of the things that that I would kind of encourage us to think about is the technical word is prompt engineering, but in plain English it is how do we ask questions so that we can get the responses that we want. That is going to be, I believe, I'm not sure if you would disagree with this or not, but I believe that's going to be a whole new job title that's coming up in the future across disciplines. Prompt engineers, right? How do we interface with this technology? So regardless of what your discipline is, I think we should look at this in three facets. One, how can this help me in my day-to-day? Developing content, fine-tuning content, customizing content. Number two, how can I integrate this into the classroom so we can do things like as we are giving presentations, how do we augment? And I would underline the word augment like 50 times. It's not here to replace us, it's here to augment what we do. Just like you were talking about in Detroit, we were worried that the robots were taking the jobs of the factory workers until we realized that every factory worker that was replaced, there was 5 jobs to manage the robot. We're looking at the same kind of thing here. And the third thing, how can it help me day to day? How can I integrate this into the classroom? And the third thing is how can I maintain academic integrity with this, right? Those 1, 2, 3. Underneath all of that is I would encourage us to go out there and play around with this thing, develop prompts that could be useful for our students so that we can guide them in how to get the information out of this that will be helpful. There's one thing that I did a couple of weeks ago, developing a lesson, and I just said, you know what? Integrate our strategic objectives for the college, tie that back into the lesson. Was amazed. Tie it back, whatever the lesson is, regardless of your discipline, right? I ask it to, you know what, the examples that I have for my assessments, they are things that are interesting and relevant to me. Rewrite it so it's interesting and relevant to the student while maintaining the spirit and the integrity of the assignment. So those are the types of things that I kind of believe really just cross disciplines. And one other thing I would add is that this is as bad as this technology gets. Keep that in mind. When you go in there and look at this is as bad as it gets. The next version is going to be potentially 500 times more powerful than this. And so for our non-technical, this is something that I'd throw out there as well. It's trained on public data sets, which means for us, non-technically, what that means is the answers that it gives you will be as good as the data that it was trained on. So if there's a lot of good data out there, it's learned that good data and it can give you good responses in that regard. Now, how does that relate to us in higher education? This is one of the things that we have to consider when we develop assessments, right? Because if we develop assessments and we give that no thought, that means that we're potentially kind of opening the door to ChatGPT being able to answer the questions. And so to restructure your assessment so that we're using modern data that ChatGPT, for instance, has not seen, so that even if you put it in, it's harder for it to come back with an answer because it's never been trained on that data. Things like that.
Yeah, and I even think, the applied application of it, when I was with a group of students, I said to them, look, if I were, teaching a course right now and you had to do an essay on this topic, the essay might be worth 10 points, but you're going to have to come in and give an elevator pitch on what you wrote. And everyone in the class is going to have to do it for the next 30 minutes. And the last 15 minutes of the class is write a paragraph that summarizes everything you heard. Because chances are in your real world, you're not going to write an essay, but you're going to write a paragraph, a well-written paragraph that can capture what it is you were summarizing. So that's a way of saying, okay, I know you're probably going to go and use this tool, but here's how it's going to manifest itself in a classroom environment and setting. And then the other aspect to it and it might be assignment where, yep, that ChatGPT is going to be its research assistant, but you got to go out and create 3 personal experiences that are added to the information that you're providing, because that's applied knowledge. That's that higher order thinking. It's the higher order thinking and questions that come from having to apply what you just learned and having it a two-way communication versus a one-way of Friday's banking information. But I want to open it to questions because this is a fireside chat. So I want to make sure that it's a dialogue with us and with all of you in the audience. So I know there's a mic going around, and if you have questions, shoot it.
Hi, thank you for this talk. I've developed a course in AI ethics, and so I've been looking at this a lot, and you can now sign up for $20 a month and get privileged access to ChatGPT, which I've done because I'm using it and putting prompts in and so on. And I've thought of various ways to redesign assignments that are helpful for face-to-face classes and so on. What I'm especially worried about, though, is the online college classes in a field like mine of philosophy, right? So how do you teach, philosophy of the last 6 months or something like that is a little tricky. And putting the prompts in from the online college classes, for example, for these short journal assignments that are kind of a common assessment tool, everything I'm getting is an A or a B, high B or an A. And so what I'm going through now is, I haven't seen it used this semester so far. I mean, week 7, I've seen some things and wondered and put it through GPT-0, for example, which can flag stuff that's probably written by ChatGPT, right? So, and so I'm trying to rethink for that context.
It only had like a 30% accuracy, right? I mean, it wasn't
Well, and that's the
reliable.
problem. So I guess 2 questions. One is, how do we use those flagging tools well? I mean, if it says there's a 90% chance that it was written by AI, well, there's a 10% chance that it wasn't. In an online college class, how do I do that? In a face-to-face class, I can do the kind of thing that you mentioned. Online college is a bit trickier. And so, I'm wondering about building flip assignments in where people do presentations instead of so many written assignments and so on. But I wonder if anybody has any advice, I guess, about the two things. What to do if it's flagged as probably written by AI, and then, for the online environment, alternative assignments.
So I'll take the first one, just about just a note of caution from everything we're seeing. The devices that have been set up to flag it are not highly reliable. They do leave an opportunity because no one's really written it. The truth is it was generated.
Yeah.
It wasn't written by anyone. It was generated by a computer, if you will. So one of the ways there is, how do we make sure that everything that comes in has reference points, so that if a student finds, let's say, generates that through ChatGPT, the next level of research is to go find where that came from, what's the source document of that, and then be able to say, according to Professor Lee, and this is where I found it. So you have a little bit of a head start about what your end product is, but there's a lot of work within your final assignment to be able to add where, and that then adds critical thinking, research to it. And then something very important is, how do you know the truth? What do you know to be true is that you trust, but you verify. So there's ways to integrate it. I'll let Noel or Professor Lee take the second half of the question.
Well, I was just going to mention, you bring up granted, it's very tricky, and there has been, Monday, the assignment that the students did in our data analytics capstone class was they developed a prompt in ChatGPT to defeat ChatGPT is what they did. And so they create the prompt, creates the output, they put it in the AI content detector, and the AI content detector couldn't detect it. There's other Quillbot and other tools out there that are specifically designed to defeat the AI content detectors. That's a little bit of a slippery slope. There are a couple of things, and the issue that...
So I want just caution is that this isn't, we can't turn around and change our syllabuses and do these things thinking that there's going to be a vehicle that really confirms plagiarism in the way that we've seen it and used it before. So I would give us a caution to make sure that we're not running to there thinking that what's been developed is really 100% proof. It's really not, and nothing that is evolving. And this is as bad as it's going to be. It's only going to get better and faster, if you will.
And the only other point I would add is that I had to go back in my syllabus, however, and underline that not so much plagiarism, but the academic integrity clause is there to make sure that we highlighted that and ask for, if you do use ChatGPT in the critical thinking, problem solving, etc., that's okay if you cite it in the context of what our assignment is. It's another source, it's another tool, but making sure that we lived underneath that. But I will grant you we're at bleeding edge technology that we're talking about, and so a lot of these things we're still working through.
And I want to speak to MDC Online real quick before Noah, I go to you. I think that is what probably has the greatest opportunity of disruption at the college. I think that when you think about the competition in online education, right now we know that the online education platform at the college is one of convenience. It certainly lags behind in success of the in-person or hybrid, and partially as students take it as a convenience vehicle and not necessarily as a platform where they can really engage. And I think in that space, whether it's UF online that's coming to visit, whether it's Northeastern University, who came earlier this week to visit and is going to be opening up a campus in Miami. The growth of online, when you look at ASU and others, those platforms have been reinvented to not necessarily be the traditional online platforms that were first originated. They're much more almost like podcasts. They're this hybrid of all of these platforms, whether it's a YouTube channel, whether it's a podcast, it's all of that. So we can lead there. And I would say that we have an opportunity to really transform our online curriculum to really accelerate its innovation path and use that as that. Versus, I think it's really hard to see how you keep it in the form it is today and defend off AI, machine learning, and all of these other things. But I think if we transform it, then it becomes a flipped classroom, as you're saying, much more presentations, applied knowledge, and going out and acquiring the best of a TED Talk or of a YouTube channel or, on a podcast.
Yeah, I think it combines with, so in industry, first I have to tell you that ChatGPT is an application, right? It's a web app. And underneath it is where all the good stuff is. You don't know what that is, but it's a web application, and there will be hundreds of them. There will be finance GPT. There will be this is where, startup, if you have a startup, if you have a startup mentality, there are billions of things you could do right now to specialize. That specialization, though, comes in domain expertise. If you are a domain expert, you can fine tune these models it doesn't know the nuances of paper trading, of any specific thing. If you, like I said, if you dive deep enough, it becomes wrong. But that's opportunity. It's not wrong, it's just untrained. And you could be that person. So that's a whole art. Prompt engineering is kind of the term we use to classify this new worker that we need. But really, it's a domain expert that knows the right questions to ask. Now, what we're seeing, and I'm teaching, 4 or 5 classes right now, all of them have moved to cohort, live learning, more TED Talk style. I do my lesson, and they are all on camera, but then it becomes it's called open office hours. So I do my little TED Talk, and then we have open office hours, and it's all them asking questions. The rubric changed. We don't do any testing. It's all communication. You're graded on your ability to communicate the problem that you're solving. And I actually think, I wish we had done more of that 20 years ago, right? I deal with engineers who don't know how to communicate their ideas. This technology moves that needle back a little bit away from the tech is going to solve for itself. We don't need as many people to solve the technical problem. Now we need domain experts so they can communicate those. So I think that's part of the rubric changing that will happen is, we're not going to give people written tests. That's not going to happen by you. You're not going to do that. You're going to be the one that uses persuasive techniques and philosophy and psychology in order to move the needle in any specific direction.
Great. Other questions from the group?
And I am glad that Miami-Dade is not getting behind in AI. That is nothing new. It's something that is growing. And in my perspective, we are creating a symbiotic relationship with the systems. That is good. Moving from addiction and stuff, who is the parasite and who is the one in control, who is the cyborg there, to use the word. But in my point of view, we don't need to be scared about this. What is research? Definitely we use somebody else's ideas and these kind of tools that we humans develop, put in our fingertips the possibility to search and look at things. And I tell my students about AI, I teach communications, and that's what I do. I tell them, use it. So the challenge is not in the students. The challenge is not the systems that are going to grow, as you say, and are going to change. The challenge is in us to change our views and adapt and to see how it comes. And nowadays, some people don't embrace what's going on. They have thousands of dollars of computer systems and stuff, and they don't know how to use it because we don't teach them. I have students that they don't know how to use a Word program. I have students that have no idea how to create a YouTube account and upload a video I have students that they don't know how to write in an academic way or do research. So the problem is in us. We are the ones converting the classroom in warehouses for students. And this is going to grow and become why? Because human ingenuity. That's what we do. And it's going to be beautiful. It's nothing new, but it's going to get better. And also, what launched us into this? COVID. Mm-hmm. We get inside COVID, everybody have to use it, and then it pushed forward. So thank you very much. I am glad that the school is getting this, because all the schools that I teach, definitely, they don't have a clue. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. But I will say this, you're absolutely right. The resistance is us, in a sense, right? And so how do we build capacity at the college to be creators and not resistors, right? And what kind of culture do we have to have so that everyone feels that they can create and not have to resist, right? Because I always find that people resist for two reasons, or push back on something. One is they don't fully understand it and don't believe they have the tools to fully understand it. And second, they don't have the space to understand it and create it. How do we create some of that, especially in our non-tech disciplines as well? But I will say to you that this comes at the time when the value of education is being questioned. The value of a college education is being questioned. The value of whether college is worth it. That is a narrative and a conversation. It has been, and this is just kind of hitting its tip about where will you learn? We often talk about we're the democracy's college, right? But people talk about democratizing education. I don't know how many people realize when they talk about democratizing education is breaking down the silos of education, breaking down the way we, in a sense, have this central control of education, and that education can be democratized in a distributive environment, which means in all of these other channels. So if we think of this as the tipping point, where are we 5 years from now? Where are we 10 years from now? And I believe that the value of education in our classrooms is the interaction. It's the human skills. The future of work is not tech skills. The future of work is human skills. Who's gonna thrive in an environment, in an economic environment, in a world that tech can do a lot for us. The one thing we know that tech can't do and hasn't perfected and probably will not perfect is the emotions of a human being, and how we use and evoke those emotions to think critically, to empathize with others, to be able to communicate, to be able to design, think. And so I think those are the opportunities for us when we're looking at learning outcomes, when we're looking at course objectives, when we're looking at course assignments. If ChatGPT can be your TA, what would you spend your time doing in a classroom? Could that then become the opportunity? Things that have you spending an enormous amount of human capital time. Could a tech platform help for that so that you can spend your time really transferring the human skills of your content expertise, of your knowledge and expertise? I want to open it up to another question, get in as many as we can. Yeah. Sarah, right in the front. Professor Lee, you want to jump in?
I was just going to really
Sarah,
quickly
get
just
the
give you a
mic.
really quick example of that. So we have a virtual TA powered by ChatGPT in the classroom now. You talk about being at the tip of the spear. You talk about being at the tip of the spear. VP Delgado pulled in Amazon, AWS. AWS volunteered resources for us to use the equivalent of ChatGPT, their products in the classroom. So I just thought that was a phenomenal example of our industry partnerships being supported from the top down with this technology to pull it into the classroom so it can augment what we do. And the word that we use was in the conversation was basically, would you rather learn, let's say, philosophy from the lips of Socrates, or would you rather watch a video text from ChatGPT by Carrot Top, right? So that's our value is going to be in the knowledge transfer, and this is to augment that. And so we're starting those initiatives, and we're going to have a pilot with the AWS technology, equivalent of ChatGPT, this summer. So I am proud to be part of this whole experience.
I don't have a question, but I have more of a comment. I did come to this talk as a resistor, so I will put that on the table. But as I listened, I got more and more excited because I really think that this emphasizes the things that we try to teach in English and humanities and social sciences, which is good reading and writing comprehension skills, and things like Pack Back and Right Question Institute teach students to synthesize information and then ask the right questions. And I think that really goes a long way to maybe being a prompt engineer at some point. And other high-impact strategies like project-based learning, fit directly into this. And so I'm actually excited to listen to this and, not so much of a resistor. Maybe not a resistor at all anymore.
We got one.
Awesome. Well, and I want to say that's why, when Antonio and I talked, I said, I want to get out to the faculty. Let's do this fireside chat. I think that if we bring it in a way that we, again, use our human skills to communicate our knowledge. Noelle has much more knowledge than I would. She can tell you kind of the backbone, which I couldn't have told you, right? Professor Lee's seeing it applied in the way. And I think together, if we tackle things that come that we believe might be challenges, that might question our own way that we think it should or should be used or how it's going to be used, but we come together to create a safe space to have conversations about the opportunities before us, then I think that's the work of education. And by the way, that's the magic that happens in the classroom with so many of our students, and why so many of our employers want our students, whether it's nursing students, whether it's tech students, aviation students, because I do think that our faculty are focused on teaching and learning. And teaching and learning by itself means that it runs two ways. That I teach, you learn, you teach, I learn, and that it works that way. We have to embody that in every opportunity that comes our way, and this is one of them. Noelle, I know you want to say.
Yeah, I just wanted to give you an example of what I'm doing every day, which is when I go into a client who's like, tell me more about this thing, this chat GP or TP. Anyway, right? Everyone's like, what? How do you say this? But that's what they want to know. And the people that are asking are not the engineers. The people that are asking are the line of business leaders, the C-level executives. They're like, what is this? How is this going to change the world for us? And so the answer that I'm providing them, and actually it leads to two other questions, which you already touched on, which is ethics and privacy. But the conversation starts with literally my question to them: what's hurting you right now? What thing have you always wanted that you have not been able to achieve in your organization? And we create a use case list of all the things they wish. We call that the I wish list first, and then the things that are broken, right? Boy, I wish that was better. Not just I wish I had it because I don't have it at all, but I wish it was better. This list becomes, and it's also things that end up on the backlog, if you understand that term. It's basically things that they've long forgotten the will to even hope for because they don't have enough staff, they don't have enough engineers. The truth of this technology is not that it will replace jobs. It actually is going to equip organizations to do the work that they actually won't be able to even hire for, right? We have millions of jobs that can't be filled even if every single person born today does this work for a living, and they won't, right? So we can't even do that. So the only way for us to be able to deliver on the vision and promise of these industry organizations is to augment, to your point, augment their skills. But the first thing that happens is we're not talking to the technologists. We're talking to the business and saying, what's hurting you right now? What do you want to do? What do you want this to be? And their answers are, man, I would love it if I asked a question into a chatbot and actually gave me a good answer. Oh, we could solve for that. It's called semantic search. Next question, right? And we can go in, and now GPT gives us the ability to get there faster. Because before we needed tens of thousands of pieces of data to train a model. Now you need one, technically. I can get a good response with one piece of data, and that changes everything. So I tried, I'm of course coming from technology. I grew up in this technology, so I can feel the pain with a lot of industries on how many people have spent time doing this work. But I also have to be really gentle with them because that work is no longer needed. Like that. In November, it eliminated and it wasn't the blue collar workers that were affected. It was us. It was like engineers, all of our work got impacted. We all of a sudden were like, I can now ask ChatGPT to do every line of code that I write, and it writes it better with no training. So what's the value an engineer has within an organization? So that's where we, like Miami-Dade, that's why this center is so important, because those are the questions we ask now, and we train people now on industry. You can now be this expertise for finance, for retail, for consumer product, goods, right? Every organization is scrambling for how to solve this problem. And this came out in November. We're 5 months in.
Right. And I don't want to lose what Noel said about coding. So you've seen code camps out there, right? There's coding camps at boot camps and charging $10,000 and all of that. In a nutshell, and by the way, there were apps doing it before that, okay? And it wasn't, so I feel bad for some of the apps that were already doing it, but ChatGPT, you put any computer code and it does it. So then the opportunity for us is, how do we ask students to think about problem solving? What are we trying to solve for if you're not spending 16 weeks memorizing a code? If I can get you to spend 16 weeks to think about the world's problems and solve for those, because if we do, guess what? You're going to get the code. How do we then spend the time understanding the mechanics behind the code, so when you see a code, you can kind of say, that seems right because of the mechanical aspects of it. So I think those are important parts that we're just kind of getting to, and how it has the opportunity to transform academia and transform teaching and learning and transform our classrooms. We're coming up on one. I want to go back out to the audience and see if there's other questions out there that anyone has.
And while you're doing that, ethics is really important here. So it is a huge area of business for almost every large tech company. We didn't really talk about it, but it is the core of using, ChatGPT is not used in the wild at companies. Because it's not ethical. We don't know whose data it is. We've lost the lineage, and those people don't get paid. So I want to make sure that if you're not thinking about ethics of this, technology, that at least is on the surface of your mind.
And there's also bias issues as well, right? Because it was trained with a Western civilization type data, so there's bias towards Western civilization, towards English, and there's other biases that we're not even certain yet, but we're at the tip of the spear.
So I have a quick comment, and this is really for the audience. Basically, since ChatGPT came in and we saw this spring semester coming for many institutions, many of those institutions just block the tool, just make it impossible to use. And I just wanted to reflect on how lucky we are to have a leader that really embraces how we, Miami-Dade College, can really be that champion that bring industry with academia and do it the right way. Not only with a President Innovation Fund for faculty to create projects on AI, but creating this opportunity to engage and get those that don't believe that could be possible to really see that it's possible. So a big shout out to our president, if you can join me.
Thank you, Antonio. Look, I fundamentally believe that we can't block our way out of these solutions that are coming forward. The answer is not going to be you can't access it on a Wi-Fi platform at the college, when we know that for many of our students, we're the single point of reliable, high-speed internet access. And so we have to leverage every resource that is available to our students, more than anything, to be able to go out and teach them, here are these resources available, but how do you use them ethically? How do you have integrity in the way that you use them, and how do you really understand that our intention is to teach you. Our intention is that you leave Miami-Dade College with the 10 learning outcomes we believe are critically important to the future of your career, to the future of your life. Having appreciation and respect for the environment, right? Communication skills, all of those, critical thinking, civic engagement. No ChatGPT is going to replace that. That's what we sit at our strength. So I don't come at the work of thinking if we just remove it, they won't. They are going to use it. How do we have these conversations? And I saw a hand up that I want to go to, and then we'll bring it in for a landing.
You, President. I'm very enthusiastic about the idea, the possibility that we have in here, and I think we need the tools. This is super fast. This is being accelerated, as you said, from November to this moment. Yes. So we faculty, everybody actually, we need to be trained to train, if I understood correctly, to prompt the right questions. So we really need something like that. And I wonder if there is a plan, like a COL or anyone or anything, like to start right away. And that will be my request.
Awesome. I love that request. And Pat Nellis is in the back of the room with CIOL. He doesn't have to answer it, but yes, the answer is that one of the things that we're working on is how do we create a professional learning platform for each of you? How do you have access, whether it's through LinkedIn Works? There's so many platforms that we can deliver real-time professional development. How do we do it, and how do we do it in the best and most effective way so that you, as employees, one of the things that I often say is that we sit with every business and industry leader, and we tell them, have a partnership with Miami-Dade College. We can give you the talent for the future of work. We can upskill your employees. We can provide all of the professional development for your employees. We do that. I'm always focused on how are we doing that with ourselves? How are we the best organizational learning college? And that is because then we invest in that. So it is going to roll out. We'll have different ways that you can access not just ChatGPT, but AI, and have just a menu of so many of them. There's Otter out there, a voiceover. You pick it takes all of your text to voice and organizes. There are all of these apps that actually preparing for this, I researched. Antonio thinks I'm a nerd because he comes over to see me, and I had researched all of these things because I wanted to make sure it's not ChatGPT. It's where technology is moving. It's where artificial intelligence is moving. And it's really how people are going to work and play and learn today, but in the future. And that includes all of us. So thank you for the question. And yes, we'll be rolling out that, and we'll probably roll it out during conference day when we're all together, and have a session also during conference day about it. So I want to bring this in. I know that we have some refreshments for all of you. You can come out to the hallway area. For those of you back in your offices listening, thank you for taking the time to plug in and listen. We'll do these around our campuses. We just picked North, but believe me, if you have an idea on a fireside chat that you want to have on your campus, send it our way. We're going to go out there. I think that's important at the institution, that we create the time for these kinds of convenings and exchange and thought leadership. And for those of you that are here, please join me for a little reception right outside, and we've got a light lunch. So thank you, everyone. The conversation with our faculty and staff and students that were here actually was wonderful and inspiring in the way that we are transforming Miami-Dade College to be able to leverage all of the technology that is out there to enhance teaching and learning, and make sure that our students are prepared for the future of work, and that our institution is prepared for the future.